everyone buying stupid, overpriced ferns. They don't grow here. You're the only fern within like a 20-mile radius. They've got like 1,000 on their backpack and on their head, so they're about 7 foot tall, luminous green, and you're just watching them like, what are you doing? Like, come back, I can see you. Well, welcome to the stream, everyone. I'm here with Josh Kelly from SniperZeroAlpha.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me on here. It's an honour.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to get different people on for different things, and ghillies is obviously a massive thing in airsoft and has been for a while. And obviously it's something you've been doing for some time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I started the whole ghillie thing probably around 4 years ago, roughly around the start of 2018 sort of time. Originally I went to my local site, which is Ground Zero Airsoft, which is mostly known for the National Airsoft Festival, which happens each year. And I originally went there just suited and booted in multicam, didn't really know what I was going to expect with airsoft, and I came away thinking, I need a ghillie suit, especially with how dense Ground Zero Airsoft is, and anyone that's been there before will know it's actually quite a nightmare for snipers because the vegetation is just so dense you can barely shoot for anything. But I came away and I thought, a ghillie suit is something that I need, and I started looking at examples and the basic sort of standard styles that you kind of would look today, the Chinese based suits, or
they hurt me, but we've all had one.
They are
and silk leaves.
It's just looking back at it now, it's kind of, you think, why did I do that? But obviously everyone started with something.
So this is some old pictures, right? Walk me through this, because I've got a ghillie which looks exactly like the one on the right. Like, it's in my loft, but I've got one. Yeah,
well, that was the first ever ghillie camouflage attempt that I made after Ground Zero. So underneath is my multicam, suited and booted setup. And it basically, I had some, scrim camo net that I had chucked in the loft somewhere. And I just thought, look, I'm going to cut a head piece for dangling over my helmet, and then just cut a hole to where it is a sort of cape. And, at the time I thought, yeah, this is, peak. I can't get any sneakier than this. And
yeah, I am a god among men wearing this.
I felt that. And
we all do.
I walked up in the next weekend at the airsoft. I thought, no one's going to see me. And then it got to the point where I was running through bushes and I kept falling over because I'd be, yanked back by a branch, and I'd just be on the floor in mud, covered in dirt and debris, and just realizing that this isn't the right method to go in. And I was getting spotted all the time because it was just too dark. And I kind of thought, I still want a ghillie, but this clearly isn't working. So I quickly binned the image on the right, and then the suit that I produced afterwards, was probably another few months down the line, was the one on the left.
And that, looking at it, is a real tree based on the leaves I can see at the top, because they've got jagged cuts, whereas most others.
I recall, so yeah, I think it was real tree, and as you can probably tell, it was littered in the at the time Gucci sneaky leaves.
Oh, we love the sneaky leaves.
We do
Stuff
love
dreams.
The sneaky
they were.
Leaves. They were, I remember a time when I won a competition with some hunting store, and I saw that they had sneaky leaves on their website. So I was like, I'll spend my entire £200 winnings on sneaky leaves, and I had 6 or 7 bags, and I just thought I was God, and I could
holding
walk
gold
around.
right there.
Yeah, and then for some unknown reason, I sold them quickly to probably buy upgrades for my rifle, inevitably, and I sold them really cheaply. And when it was at the point before there was kind of cottons being used, and everyone knowing that cottons is better, and there was just this shortage of sneaky leaves, I kind of was thinking, why did I sell these things that are going for?
Yeah, I had same as you. I had I can't remember who. I think it might have been KM that did a post years and years ago when he used to do his like Friday night crafting ones. And I remember him talking about like this traffic light system. Like when you're standing up, you should be sort of dark and get progressively lighter and stuff. And sneaky leaves came up, and I remember I went on eBay and bought like 5 packs, no problem.
Yeah.
And then I gave a few packs away, and then like 6 months later, I was like, oh, I'll go on eBay and buy some more. Gone. Like,
yeah,
there was one
crazy.
company, like some archery company in the US, who held the distribution rights, and it was a
Yeah.
nightmare to get. But now you think, who the fuck's using sneaky loops? Not that they're
No,
bad. Like, in fact, we'll go on to materials actually.
Yeah, the MO5 was one of my favorites as well.
Because I know exactly where you got that. That is from a shop whose closest pronunciation is Verstilica.
Yeah, that's how I'd probably say it. And
it's heavy. Heavy stuff.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I know Ed, or Silly Ghillie, he's got a whole setup that he made, I believe, himself of that stuff. And I can only imagine how heavy it is, but it is a very effective pattern. And it's just a shame that airsofters have discovered that, because it's just not in stock ever.
No, so no, it goes out. You get a newsletter like, we've got it. No, we haven't.
Yeah, it's just gone. But when I did have access to it before I just kind of gave up trying to get it, it was a good go-to pattern. And a lot of the materials on the right, on the MO5 mesh, was a type of mesh. It was before COVID time, so before AGM or anything like that. I basically wanted to branch out, because by then my suit crafting work and business for people had grown quite a lot, and I wanted a way to make each suit a lot more like specific and unique to myself, so I can say, these materials are dyed by me, they're crafted by me, rather than buying things in. So I started moving away from, at the time, the only solution, which was Halo Screen, and I found a new mesh type. I can't remember the name of it now, but I discovered it actually transmitted the light quite well, and it just absorbed the colours quite well. So the colours that I concocted together with the dyes came out how they looked, in dye form. Came out.
Yeah, when you do cotton, that's not always they come out really muted.
Yeah,
whereas inks work really well on cotton versus paint and things.
Yeah, dye is a lot. Yeah, as you say, it's a bit more tricky with cottons. And moving just over to the cottons, the method that I found, which I found actually helped get the correct colours of browns. That's only one shade of colour, for example. It was quite yellowy for a specific area that I was building a suit for. But I actually my cottons don't start white. They kind of start as a goldeny yellow colour. So they come to me from the company in a goldenly yellow colour. And I find that kind of pigment of dye mixed with the other darker brown dyes, when I put together, they actually kind of mix quite well together, rather than starting with a white canvas, which I find actually works quite well to give me different shades. It's my process is actually quite easy. I actually don't have many colours that are mixed together when making brown cottons. I just time how long, because the longer the dye is in the pot, the darker it gets. So I can kind of say,
what's that stuff we were all using to dye our seats? You remember back when we all had like the North Mountain suits that were really good, but the colours are crap? What's it called? There's a massive company that you boil it. Dylon, that's it. Yeah. Dylon. It's one of those. You could dye your silk leaves with it. You could dye your suit with it, but if you're making a tea and turn around and you've left it 2 minutes too long, all of a sudden it's like practically black or like luminous green.
No.
Whereas that material you've got there, because it starts gold, you can see where you've dyed it. It's still got like a little bit of refraction even to it from the light.
Yeah, it gives a good shade. And what I do, I started, rather than having solid colours of cotton, I found this method where I get the newly dyed bits of cotton straight out, and I put them into this sieve, and I kind of put a high pressure of water on and kind of just flip it over a few times with my hands, and that makes where the water impacts on it kind of makes the dye run off, and it kind of gives that patchy look to it. So it actually gives it two contrasting shades of brown, which I find it actually kind of helps.
Yeah, you can see it like where in the pictures it creases, like specifically on the top right, one on the top left. You can see that on the top right there's a shape where it's been crumpled and you've got a pattern. On the left there's almost a half circle patch. But things of that work. And when I had Ed and James on, we were talking about materials, and obviously with the Halo thing, AGM, all that mesh. Yeah. Like if you know what it is, you can get it. It's
no,
like the
definitely.
IR side of it is a different thing that adds a cost that is, in my opinion, unnecessary for 99.9% of airsofters that are buying it. Like, obviously, if you're doing milsims and things, it's great. But for the most part, the IR is just a cool feature rather than a basic. But like with mesh, you've got, obviously, you had Novrich come out with the tull or the tool, which is abysmal.
That was debatable. Yeah,
but you get power mesh. Power mesh is quite good if you can get it in the UK.
Yeah.
I was really lucky that where I had my old workshop, there was a company, and they used to make wedding gloves and like gloves for like, what's that big horse event that all the rich people go to? Ashcroft? Where they wear the hats.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
They used to make gloves and hats for them, like expensive, like a set of gloves was like 800 quid.
Wow.
And she was out walking her dog, and I was out a ghillie outside with like some mesh on it and like cottons and stuff, and she was like very posh. She was like, "Oh, excuse me, what is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's me being all like covered in ink and shit, being like, oh, it's a ghillie suit." And she said, "Oh, what are you using?" And I'm like, "Oh, there's a bit of cotton over there. We got some power mesh there. We got some cotton bias there." And I showed her like different types of meshes, and she was like, "Oh yeah, we use this mesh for this, and we use that for that, and you can buy that from there." And a lot of my old stuff, like when I did, I think my second sniper ops, I redid my suit for that. And a lot of that is cottons that are inked with, I don't think I used any artificial leaves. I think it was literally like cotton and different types of meshes and things that I found. And this green stuff, it's like a metallic mesh, but it looks really good. It looks like thin strips of leaves.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but that was really good.
Yeah.
But you can make anything work if you've got the eye for it.
No, exactly. Yeah. With the mesh on the right that I started using, it was quite a challenge at first to get the right shades of dyes that I liked. The amount of times I was back and forth in the forest testing the shades, but I ended up getting a few shades that I was actually quite happy with. And I remember when I was on watching a separate podcast on Sniperworks, I believe it was, they had the man himself, Lakova. I'm not going to try and attempt his second name.
SniperZeroAlpha?
Yeah, we'll go with that. And I remember they actually brought up the topic of this mesh that I'd started using, because I kind of started promoting it to try and it wasn't really to sell. It was more to try and just show people that Halo Screen isn't the only thing that, you don't need to live and breathe Halo Screen. And it's not because it doesn't work. Obviously, it works very well. And it's just, I was always wanting to try and just expand the market and show that it was possible. And I remember...
so this brings me on to a question. So I'll get rid of these materials, because you're about to start talking about what I was just about to ask, which is these. Me and Josh were speaking before the stream, and I was saying that one of my very first suits was a Jackal suit, which was basically Jute on steroids. Like, they were huge, they were heavy.
Yeah.
But Jute, when done well, works. And there's a reason why it's predominantly used everywhere still. But walk us through the suit on the pink shed.
Right, so on the vibrant pink shed, it's basically obviously quite a short, low-profile ghillie, and all of the Hessian that's on. I wanted to originally move away when I started researching into existing Hessian suits, mainly used by military snipers. I saw that all the Hessian was always really long, and I just thought, there's obviously other options, and you would easily think, let's make short bundles. So I kind of experimented with that ghillie there, about 4 to 6 inch strand in bundles, and all the colours were hand dyed with different formulas that I'd worked quite well. And Hessian takes up colour quite well, because it's obviously a natural fibre. And it was basically on that shroud. It's not familiar to the airsoft market because it's specifically for the military market. And the only reason I've got my hands on it is because the company that's made it, I'm doing other stuff with them related to their sniper products and releases for the military. And they basically sent me one to craft up and just have for myself. It's definitely the best.
The base, you mean, like the uncrafted base mesh,
Viper
style?
Uncrafted base. Yeah. So that's kind of the thing that they've created, which is kind of looking to be the next generation of shrouds for the kind of the military, because most snipers use kind of base, which is on the right, which is kind of this Viper tactical concealment hood style.
Yeah.
which isn't, compared to the one on the left, isn't as good. Yeah, I mean, I was testing that out with the different colours, and I kind of started moving on to Hessian for my like personal suits, because I've always started gaining more of a passion for the role of British snipers in the military, and I aspire to be a sniper when I join the army in a few years' time, hopefully, once I've finished with other work.
So quickly, how old are you? Because I've been speaking to you for years when you first started, and I think you were still in school when we were talking.
I'm 17 at the moment, so I'm actually currently going through my A-levels. I've got a few of those left. But when I started, I was about 14, 15, and kind of through all the work and stuff I've done, the main business crafting of things started when I was about end of 15 years old.
See, I've got to say something. I don't know many full-grown adults, let alone young men, that have actually pulled their finger out and done something. Like, there's men my age that are still fanning about and not doing anything. You're at school, you're studying, you're going through the hassle of obviously growing into a man, and then you've still got the time to put that aside and do something that's making you money and could influence your career. Like, obviously you might join the army and that might go one way, but this could be something that's set up in the background that leads you on to other things later in time. So general shout out of respect and kudos for me there, because as I said, there's a lot of people that have no fucking clue. That are a lot older, have a lot more experience, and have probably had a lot more help, and you'll come along just doing something you love and it's coming out well. So definitely some respect from in. I think we got a message from Steve earlier, but definitely because I like the Hessian suits. I mean, my history of them is very old school, because I think the Jackal was pretty much just like 3 shades of green, like that was it.
I've probably done over 100 leaf suits since I started, the business of crafting for people. I've probably had in my house over the years probably 60 or more KMCS suits.
They're definitely one of the more popular ones, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was quite a difference from before the KMCS came out, and it was kind of NMG and sort of things like that. And then the KMCS just kind of stormed the market. And
like the original Jack Pike LLCS suits from like early 2000s, maybe. I think I've got one of them in my loft still, or at least I've got the trousers for it. They were brilliant. Like they were generally, the mesh wasn't as good as, well, nowhere near as good as the KM. It's still very thin mesh. No. But in terms of the pattern, like I think them and Cabela were the sort of 2 first companies to come out and do sort of LLCS, or basically laser cut leaves. Cabela do some really interesting stuff. Well, they used to. I don't know if they do anymore. But they used to do some hybrid. It looks like Halo Screen before Halo Screen, and they're tans and browns, and they're like Australian, like African Sahara sort of style patterns, where they're thin mesh trousers with browns and tan jute with this weird mesh. And you used to be able to buy it in a set for like $170.
Yeah.
And it was years above anything in the airsoft world. Like the mesh was brilliant. The jute was not just some off the shelf tan that you buy off of like AliExpress. It was like they looked at where they were doing stuff and they made a whole suit for it, which is probably why it's not around now, because they probably put all their eggs in one basket and thought no one's going to want leaf suits. And then every airsofter goes, I want to look like a tree.
Yeah,
they're probably kicking themselves.
Oh, I would imagine so. Yeah, it's there's definitely some good examples, and rare examples like the Jack Pike, the old style stuff. That stuff worked really well.
So we have a question.
Oh, hello.
So this is from Thiesk Verhulst. I think he's just asking questions to make me look silly pronouncing his name. He says, do you guys think dyeing the Chinese maple leaves is a little outdated? Cotton is the way to go nowadays. So I'll let you answer that first, Josh.
I'd agree and say that, the kind of style of leaves is very much in the past. Cottons is definitely the way to go because you can just kind of make any shade you want. You can make greens if you want to. I know that's not really used as much, but dyeing cottons is definitely taken on a lot more recently than before. And I know there are a few companies, I forget their names, but they kind of ink I'm sure you know what I mean, they kind of ink these like stalks, which are smaller styles of sneaky leaves. They're not sneaky leaf branded, but there's one guy in Europe somewhere, and then one in America, I think. And their colours are good, but I would say that a lot of the time these generated cut leaves just don't work. And you kind of notice it a lot more now when you've seen how cottons kind of crumple up and react when they're wet, and they kind of look how they look when they're in the environment. And then you compare it to, you see, a few plasticky leaves that stick out, which often can get you spotted, sometimes not. And
ferns,
they work.
Everyone buying stupid overpriced ferns.
Oh,
you see them from a mile away because you're like, they don't grow here. You're at a site and you're like, they don't grow here. You're the only fern within like a 20-mile radius.
No, it's
and it's not just one. They've got like 1,000 on their backpack and on their head, so they're about 7 foot tall, luminous green, and you're just watching them like, what are you doing? Like, come back, I can see you.
I've had a few. Quite a few orders of suits in the past where they've kind of shown me a picture and it's, lots of ferns, and I've kind of thought, okay, it's all right to put ferns on these suits, but I usually dust them down because there's not really anywhere where I found realistic looking ferns. It's usually very luminescent, so I always dust it down with different shades of greens and stuff to kind of help improve it. But then I always keep it to a minimum anyway, because if you're using things like Halo Screen or now AGM or any other mesh, the stuff that I use for myself, it can kind of just work without having to replicate an actual plant, because if you get the colours and the positioning right, then you're going to be able to blend in because of those features.
Yeah, I think I can't remember who I was having this conversation with. Maybe it was Kicker Mustang, might have been Ed. But I think the way that people were dyeing the leaves was good. Like, that was a step up from what people have been doing before.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Ink-wise, things like Pebeo ink was really good, like the sepia colour, the Umbra Raw, like they were really good colours. But everyone was just getting the leaf, because they're all obviously 5-thingied leafed maples.
Yeah.
And they're just putting it on, like, flat. The easiest way to use it was, don't use it if it was a leaf. Use it as if it was a half-decent material you've dyed that you would crumple up in the same way you would Halo, AGM and cotton.
Yeah.
And they don't look bad. And I think a leaf suit designed and made for an environment will be very effective. And a cotton suit done the same way would work very well. And a jute suit, like, now, if you said, jute suits are just as effective, like, you'd have everyone going, no, they're not. You've got to have leaf suits. And it's like, no. A shit suit designed for its environment will be better than a shit hot suit that's designed to just kind of work everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, my view of leaf suits is they can be like 90% effective, but only in 20% of places.
Yeah.
Because that shape, those leaves, if you're laying out in a field of grass, you're not going to blend in. If you're standing up trees where there aren't even any branches there and you've just got a big chunk of bark, you're going to stand out. Whereas something like jute at a distance works very well in most environments because it's just a mass of different colours. There's no defined shape to it. Whereas a leaf, like a sneaky leaf on someone's shoulder, will look great in one place and then terrible in another. So I wouldn't say they're outdated. I think they just need to be used more like you would use cotton, where you crumple it and use the leaf as a shape rather than trying to. I mean, I haven't played at a site where I've hid somewhere and gone, I'm going to blend in well because I'm surrounded by maple leaves.
Yeah, no,
it just doesn't work.
Exactly. No, I did exactly what you've just said. I started realising that sneaky leaves don't work how I was kind of imagining that they did.
Take them off the stems and then crumple them up.
Exactly. Yeah, that's whenever I had someone send a suit and they said, I've got sneaky leaves as well, can you use these? And I thought, I can, but just be aware that I want to rip these off the stems and just use it a bit like cottons once I've sorted them. And they're kind of, a few times they've been like, oh, no.
You break it and they're like, that's a pound. That single leaf is a pound.
And just don't touch the sneak it, send them back. And but sometimes they're like, well, best. And usually they're quite happy with the outcome because they don't get spotted by unrealistic looking leaves. Yeah.
The other one is the ivy, like that horrible bright green ivy that people buy from like Hobbycraft.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I've never seen such luscious, healthy looking ivy in my life.
Yeah, I usually source that sort of stuff in, but I change the colours again like I do with fern using green paints. And I only use about 1 or 2 of the leaves on the stem, very minute amounts, and I use it more as a filler for the suits. So the cottons and the mesh and other parts of the suit are, predominant, and then the ivy is kind of like the underlayer, like the floor of the canopy of material sort of thing.
I mean, people have it up here and they're walking around, and you're like, what? No. Like when you lay it down, that's going to look good. Because the thing is, like, no matter how good your suits are, not yours specifically, but just suits in general,
yeah,
they're all shit the second you move.
Yeah,
like, you can be in the best ghillie in the world. You start scratching your ass, I'm going to see you. My eye will be drawn to that movement. Got another question coming? This one's for you. So this is from Brad saying, are suit orders typically coming from new players who have discovered airsoft via YouTube and tried to replicate what they've seen, or are they veteran players?
So through most of the orders that I've had, a lot of the time it's, I'd say, veteran players that have moved from just standard, multicam or whatever, running around with an AG, and they've kind of realized that they want to try and move into the world of sniping. And a lot of the time they just can't spend the time on the suit because it's time consuming, or they just can't get it in their heads how to get it together to work.
It's an art form. Like, everyone can craft in terms of you can take something and attach it to something else. I'm an alright crafter. I've been doing it a while, but people like you and Ed are phenomenally better than me because you just have an eye for it. And there's people out there that will just, like, you must see it now. Like we'll use ATGM as an example, right? So that's gone out. Loads of people have ordered it. And I've now seen loads of people that have taken a KMCS. Yeah. And it's now just a green mush. Yeah. They've put every single piece of AGM they could find on their suit. And you're like, you're never going to blend in now. Like,
no, exactly.
Whereas I think people like yourselves will know, actually, I only need to use this little bit on that arm there because I've got this colour next to it which works, and I've already done this colour down here it works. Whereas everyone else is just like, throw it on everywhere.
Yeah, it's no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, a lot of I do have a few new players that kind of think, if I want a suit done, I want to get it done properly and quickly. And I can usually do a suit quite quickly for someone from when the base suit arrives to me, whether it's sent to me from the customer or I buy it in for them, and to actually having it finished. But I usually take on about 5 suits a month, maybe more if I'm busy, maybe less if I'm but I usually say I get those 5 done in that month because it just gives me time to space things out, especially with Jute suits and things like that. They take slightly longer.
Well, Jute suits don't have a base, do they? Like with a leaf suit, at least you're building on something that's there. You've got like a canvas that someone's done the outlines on, whereas a Jute suit, obviously if you're using, like, let's say, like the Viper Tactical hoods, obviously I'm guessing you're dyeing that before you put anything on it because they're quite bright.
Yeah, I usually I either dye them or spray them down again to dust it down, and also the inside of the suit as well, which some people don't think about because the actual mesh on the inside hasn't been printed like it has on the multicam side. It's a lot lighter, so I see it as if it rides up above your belt kit or something like that, you're going to get seen because it's kind of a bright white spot. So I usually dust that down. But the process with a Jute suit, takes a little longer. Especially when doing orders for military snipers, which I've branched into a lot more, where the Jute on its own, even when it's been dyed, it just still looks slightly just not right. So I didn't send you the video, but on some of my Instagrams, it shows basically me crawling through a river in quite cold temperatures at the time. But that's the whole thing, is basically the process of weathering a suit.
The old mud baths, what the American snipers say, American, all of them do it now, don't they? It's literally just that lovely suit you've just spent 3 days making, go roll around in shit. Like, just get it dirty, let it dry out, let the natural fibers open out, take on the natural dyes. Like, I buried my Jack Pike suit for about 3 months. I was talking to Paul Smith back in the day, and James, and the newer Jack Pike, not the newest Jack Pikes, but the ones before, they had like a weird like purple tinge to them. Yeah, I know what you're on about, But I used to have a bit, like my back garden used to have clay under it. So I just fucking dug down about 2 foot and just left it in clay for, like, I literally forgot. I was meant to leave it over the weekend and I just forgot. And I found it like months later. And it looked alright. Like it just sort of bleached and pulled a lot of the really light colours out. But
no, that's exactly what it's for. And I've actually, the kind of style of kind of clay and mud that actually colours the suits the best when you're kind of using just standard colours and not dyed is like this kind of red mud and clay, which you usually see kind of in America, that you kind of see the snipers crawling through. So I've actually ordered in the past, I've ordered in red clay specifically so I can get those sort of natural colours into the Jute. And once that's dried off after couple of days. It takes a while to dry. Why I brush it all down to kind of make it all hairy and fibery. And then with the fibers that come off, I actually can use that. I was taught it by an ex-sniper. You basically keep all the fluff and you can glue it onto things like your gloves or like the peak of your hat or something if you're using it. But obviously with airsofters, you've got a lot more kind of premium materials to do things like that. But in the military world, that kind of fluff is kind of, a godsend when you're just trying to break up, the basic shape. So
I like using scapper tape, not just on gear, but you can actually make shapes out of it. Like obviously on can't point annoyingly, but on like a Viper hood, obviously they come with the lattice on it, don't they?
Yes.
What you can do, like if you're really cheap or bored and just trying something new, get scapper tape. And have I got it here? I don't know if you saw. I put a post up today of my SSG 10, and I basically spray painted different scapper tape and then just stuck it on and layered it so it looks a bit like bark.
Funnily enough, I've got my spotting scope here, which I use for obviously spotting, and I did a similar thing.
Yeah, it works because it just adds a bit of depth, but you can do it with your suit. You can literally just tape onto the suit and then just spray it.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of just gives a really good texture. I used to give the colours to this, I use Camo pens because I find that they're I don't see them used very often in the airsoft market, but I've always used them since they came out.
I've got them.
You can really you can really just add really precise patterns to gear and guns. I use it to
edging's where they're really useful. Like when you've got just like a black edge or a right angle, especially if you're doing a gun. You can obviously just get your pen out like a green or a tan and just buff up that edge. Another question's come in from Ed, as in Silly Ghillie Ed. He's asked, Josh, what do you think of Mimtek's minimalist approach to crafting?
I like the stuff that he produces. I've always seen the way he makes his patterns. He's an artist. He is. He uses a lot of very natural things. I always see, these rocks that he's just, picked up from wherever, and he's somehow just replicated that into, paint form or stencils or spray painting. And I know the reversible suit that he's released, the green and the brown side, the patterns on that work, really well. And I think it's very impressive how he manages to replicate these natural objects that you get anywhere, and he can applies it to guns, to gear. He makes it into a pattern form. I think he's definitely one of the best in terms of making patterns. I think if it was available to the masses, you could get rolls of the mesh that he uses on his reversible suit. I think that would be the next sort of base pattern that a lot of suits should be made on. I think it'd be quite an advancement, but I know rightly so he probably keeps that close to his chest and makes his own stuff, and rightly so.
Definitely.
So I can imagine the amount of time that he's put into that, it's worth it. But it's definitely impressive what he's done.
And the airsoft market is rife with thieves in terms of shit coming out days after someone else has put something out. So people have stopped using the questions function and just started putting comments. So I'm going to go and try and pull out some comments.
Sure.
What do we think of the Novrich leaves? If you're determined to use leaves, I think they're all right. They're some of the better leaves, but they are also AliExpress leaves. So if you want them, you can generally get them quite cheaper. Yeah,
I completely agree with that. I couldn't really say any more.
Are the Novrich suits as good as the KMCS? The mesh is just strong. Like the mesh is good on them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The patterns, not so much. Josh, have you had many of these suits sort of end up on your lap?
I've had 2 Novrich suits come through. I've had one where it's without the hood, and then I've had one with the full suit and trousers. And for the suit and trousers order, they also sent about 4 boxes of the Novrich leaves, and I was kind of inclined to use those because they kind of said, I want you to use them.
Yeah.
So I assembled them as best as I could in patterns to make it work and not look like they were, what they actually were. So it was it took me a little bit longer than my usual suits where I use my own materials. There's a few times where I'd done the entire back of a suit and I looked at it and thought that the arrangement just wasn't all right. so I had to change it. But in terms of the question against the KMCS, I think in general, kind of UK woodland, especially in the autumn period, if we're talking about the brown KMCS, I think the KMCS does dominate because of just the shades. I know a lot of people sometimes darken it down or add patterns, mainly started by Ed with acrylic ink, which I think is the right way to go, because I find the suits, sometimes they are slightly grey, more grey than the environment, but obviously with crafting that can be resolved. But with the Novrich suit, when I first tested it, once it was crafted, I was quite happy with how it looked. It was quite a controversial thing, because when he first released the photos, it was obviously, oh, this is just a Chinese suit pattern, and it pretty much is.
He's got a few patterns. The main pattern that he pushes is absolutely the cheap Chinese pattern.
Yeah, exactly.
That even so, for me, I would buy it in any other pattern than that horrible Chinese pattern. Yeah. Because for the price, the actual suit, like the material for the price is good. Like, you're getting a strong mesh suit. So even if you got it, and what you can actually do is you can literally get a little knife and cut the end off one leaf, and you can pull the strips off, and then you start with just a bare mesh suit. They're not stitched on very well.
No.
But for the price, they're still very bloody good, I think.
No, exactly. I mean, with what I found is that the way that the mesh was printed with the same pattern made it work a lot better than, like the £20 suits you can get with the same pattern, which is like a lot more kind of mosquito net.
Yeah,
where
it's the material that makes the difference.
Yeah, the base mesh doesn't work as well with those Chinese suits compared to the Novrich, and I found that the actual way the mesh was printed actually helped it improve in terms of its blending. So I'd say, in terms of that question, it's down to the environment. I think for the UK, the KMCS is usually the go-to, but in maybe more European forests, I'm not as familiar, but it might dominate more with the Novrich suit because of the more kind of goldeny colours.
That's the thing, isn't it? Like, if you're watching, like, let's say you want to get into sniping and you're watching someone like KM. Obviously now he's playing all over the world, but obviously when he's predominantly playing in the UK with that particular suit in that colour, obviously it looks really effective. But then you watch someone with a Nov suit playing in America, and they're in some like really green, reedy covered thing, and they're rocking the Everglade pattern. That looks alright. Like, that works a lot better than a brown would, or well, an untreated brown, let's say.
Exactly.
Adrian Lee says, "I love the suit that you made for him." So that's just a thank you for you.
Yes, I remember Adrian Lee. Yeah.
Steve Bayliss says, "Ivy, then bag it and tag it and sell it at inflated retail price." Sound familiar? I think it does.
I agree. Yeah.
Silly Ghillie says, "You're forgiven for being a sneaky Leaf fanboy." So that's them. Have we got any other questions? Oh, so we've got this one from Paul Winter. What do we think on Con Camo? So I'll let you start, because I've seen you've obviously got a load of it, haven't you?
I love Con Camo. I usually use it as my go-to base pattern. A lot of people could probably say it's somewhat overrated, but I find more so the browner style Con Camo works really well. To just it does the job of it can confuse the brain, and I use it a lot as well. I was inclined to pay the higher prices for it because I was interested in the science of how the pattern was developed, and how it's designed to confuse the brain, and you've got to take that with a pinch of salt, sort of thing. But you see these pictures that they put on their website, and the way it kind of blends into the minimal environment, with really small leaves and twigs, it works really well, especially with the wider range of colors that they released, which they didn't have previously when I bought the stuff. But I've got a green jacket, I've got brown trousers, and then I've got some headwear in Con Camo. And I usually, when I do airsoft on the odd occasion, I usually run a Jute suit, because I try and go with the more traditional style of things, and then I wear just Con Camo.
I think I've got a picture of you. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. So on the right, I'm wearing I believe it's Con Camo brown trousers, or it might be Desert DPM, which has been spray painted and modified to be a more autumnal colour. And then I'm wearing a green Con Camo jacket, which has got the mesh that I make added on top to help give a bit of 3D. And then obviously the same ghillie that was on the pink shed on top. I kind of find that setup works quite well because it's a mixture of being lightweight, but also it doesn't catch on as many things. And a lot of people, when looking at a jute suit, they think, it brings half the forest home. And
which is what you want. One of the first things you should do when you get to a site with a jute suit is throw the thing on the floor, kick it around a bit, and that's it.
Usually at Ground Zero, I usually end up going to games later because I'm still perfecting the natural veg that's been added. And I know quite a few airsofters wouldn't bother with natural vegetation, and that's understandable because they're always moving. But my play style, I usually move very rarely. I kind of just stay and be patient, and it might seem quite the boring side of airsoft, but it's more the adrenaline when you've been sat there for maybe 20-30 minutes and seen nothing, and then you get a group of guys
or something.
You get a group of guys trying to be sneaky, and you kind of think, this is why I'm here, and you kind of can eliminate them without being seen, or the direction just isn't known. And especially with the natural veg, the way I do it is obviously as you move environments, the veg changes and you just change it. I usually change it quickly because I stay on the outskirts of the game, probably like most snipers. And it's not very busy, so it gives me time to quickly change the veg. And I follow a lot of practices that I've been taught or learned working with military snipers and stuff, with the stuff I do for them, and it's kind of makes me look at that approach to the game and try and make it as realistic as possible. I
think what a lot of people forget is sniping and airsoft is very, very different. The role is, chances are you're probably not going to fire a shot. You are literally there to just observe and not be seen. So you can put natural veg on, and obviously in summer, you end up changing it quite frequently because you'd be amazed at how quick things wilt. But when I did a sniper ops event, a proper 24-hour sniper ops event, you have 10 shots in your rifle and your pistol. That's it. And there's 8 of you on 100 acres, and you're all fucking ghillied up. So you're moving slowly. You're constantly touching up your suit. You're sitting for an hour. I was playing with James, and we planned an ambush because we saw some people the day before in an area where they had no real reason to be there. So we thought they camped there. So we got up at 3 a.m. I remember James leaning over me, shaking me Dan, do you want a coffee? I'm like, yeah, thanks. And he's got a little fire going. And then we stalked in the darkness for an hour to get to the other side of this site where we'd seen these guys previously.
Yeah.
And we just laid in a bed of ferns, and literally James was pulling ferns off, throwing them over the top of me. And I'm just laying there with a tree, just dozing off like that. And then you hear a twig break and you're there. Whereas airsoft, you're sniping, you're running, you're sniping, you're running, you're there until someone starts spraying at the bush you're in and things like that. Because obviously in the army or in a real life situation, you wouldn't use your very limited ammo capacity to start shooting at a tree in the hope that you think there's someone there. Whereas obviously in airsoft, people do. So it's very, very different. So I think that play style though is generally rewarding. I'm happy to lay somewhere for 45 minutes to get that one very good shot, or to get the drop on a group of people. I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another question from Hutchie. He's got another question, but I don't want to ask it because everyone will get upset and it will start derailing the thread, which has nothing to do with us. It's another suit that looks remarkably like another suit.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Almost,
yeah, strange. Someone's just followed the progress, heavily stalked the progress of another product, maybe. Maybe that's what it is. But Hutchie's asking, what do we think of the Phantom Leaf base? Which I actually haven't seen much of. I've seen a lot of the Camo stuff, which I do like.
Yeah.
But the Phantom Leaf, I've only ever seen pictures. And I think Brad, who was in the stream, I don't know if he still is, he was doing some stuff with Phantom, and they sent him some stuff because he's in Norway. And everything over there is rocks and moss. And I remember him sending me some pictures and it looked good, but I generally haven't got any experience with it. So I'm hoping you have.
I haven't used it before. I've seen it around and kind of compared to Concam and stuff. And the best way I could describe it is it basically looks like snake skin. It's basically snake skin in different shades with some other kind of geometric shapes. It does work quite well, especially I've seen, as you said, in quite rocky environments, it works quite well, especially their whitish grey style. but it's all it's not made. It's the pattern and the kind of materials are made by the same company that makes the dress for Camo. So different design companies, but the same manufacturer. So
Leo Collier do a lot of the clothes for Camo.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, these kind of I want to get some Fanta Leaf in, and I probably will over the next few months. Probably the green stuff for summer, or maybe brown. Is
it the Wasp 2, the green stuff?
Wasp 2, and I've also seen that they have their own kind of, it's a bit like the Camo Ghost Hood. I'm sure you've seen that, but in Phantom Leaf style, and it looks a lot better than the Camo in that style because it's kind of got these things that are already hanging off, a bit like Camo. However, the way the pattern forms, it kind of just makes it break up the shape a bit more than the Camo in that style, I think. So I think if I would get Phantom Leaf, I'd probably start with that. But I think the pattern works quite well, and obviously so, because they've released so many different shades, they wouldn't be doing that if it didn't work. Interesting
how, like, when I started Airsoft back in 2004,
that was when I was born.
Jesus. That would make me feel old. Back when I was young and you weren't even conceived, I was playing at Worthing and like,
I thought I should just mention that, yeah.
Wow. If I wasn't concerned about being bald, now I'm concerned I could be your father. Jesus. But like back when I started, you literally had like DPM, Desert, Flectarn's been around for God knows how long, and Tiger Stripe. Yeah. Like you go to a game, you were wearing that, or you'd have like the American desert pattern. Can't remember what it's called.
Yeah. I think they call it. I think the nickname's Cookie Camo, isn't it, or something like that?
Yeah, what they had in like the Black Hawk Down, that sort of time.
I've actually got some of that next to me. Funnily enough, that sort of.
Yeah, like that's literally the only camos that you ever saw at a game.
Yeah.
Whereas you think in the last 10 years, you've got multicam, Vegetato, which I quite like actually. I think Vegetato in the right environment is really good. Yeah. Obviously you've got Pencott and all the cool stuff they've done.
Yeah.
Ghost Con Camo. Obviously Novrich has got his one, which to me looks just like Tiger Stripe but modernized.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I kind of thought the color schemes were similar to Camo and the pattern was similar to Tiger Stripe. So it's kind of
like they've taken the palette from Camo and mixed it with like the NARM era Tiger Stripe. But I mean, it looks like I think I commented on something today about their plate carriers, and they've got obviously new patterns coming because their plate carrier does look pretty good. And they had Flectarn and the Krutzer, whatever, is it Krutzer or something they've called it? But
I think so.
It doesn't look that bad, to be honest.
No, I mean, I haven't used it, but, you know, it looks like it should work, especially if they're using similar palettes to Camo. And the way they're kind of making these new styles of, like, molly webbing attachment, it just seems, whether that's over the top and they're just trying to make it look fancy, or if it actually does help improve. I heard apparently it helps distribute weight more. I haven't experienced that.
I mean, from a heat point of view and a weight point of view, if you're stripping 30% of the material away from like let's say you've got like a panel like that, and today you've just got 3 cuts going down for you to weave it through. Obviously, if you're keeping the same 3 cuts but removing like everything else in between, obviously from a weight and heat perspective, it will be taken a lot down.
Absolutely,
the plate carrier is good, and for the price, like obviously you could buy a real steel quality thing, something like Warrior Assault Systems. I used to have a couple of their DCSs because I think his is up there with the price. But if the quality is alongside what Warrior do, or
exactly,
who else do some good stuff? Templar Assault Gear. If they're that price, regardless of the fancy patterns and the design, they need to be that sort of quality. And if they are, it might do all right.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Another question from Ed again. Josh, apart from Jute and Hessian, what other materials would you use to break the line of the head and shoulders?
So obviously there's the basics of, you know, cottons and mesh, but then I've got some examples here.
So have you got any hoods there?
I've only got my Jute suit, which is on the door, which is the same one that you see in those photos. I can grab that. In terms of the materials,
I was going to be like, please tell me you're wearing trousers when you stand up, because that could have gone very differently.
No, it's don't worry.
God, imagine if someone clipped this, Josh. They'll just take the bit out where I'm concerned about being your father, and then you standing up without trousers on. Jesus. Someone's got to do that.
Fine.
Please tell me you're not wearing trousers when you stand up.
No, don't worry. I use this stuff, which I started discovered after the release of Nano Screen from Lacova, and they're kind of inspired by the whole light reflectancy of cottons. You won't really see it in the light, but it's basically, I've got a browner version as well. This one's got a slight golder pattern on. But it's basically silk that's been not mega expensive silk, a slightly more cheap alternative of silk. But the way it's been dyed from the factory, the colours reflect quite well. So if it's crumpled up, it gets darker where the folds
the shadows fall, basically bring the tone down. Exactly. Yeah, I think you put this on Instagram the other day, didn't you?
Yeah, it basically does what Nano Screen does. And what I found actually with this material, specifically the green style, is that when the sunlight was out and I had it, a bundle out, it appeared much brighter, and the leaves that were around it were reflecting their brightness onto this, which made this look brighter. And then I thought, that those colours work well, because that's what the only thing I was testing. And then the sun went behind a cloud and everything got darker. And as I turned to more brambles, where obviously it's all a lot darker itself, I noticed that the material looked darker in itself, and cotton doesn't do that as much. It kind of stays its shade unless it's wet.
It's having reflection. Like, that's why cotton, as you said, when wet, looks good. And after the stream, I'll send you this stuff I was using, because it's similar to that, but it's transparent. Yeah. So its colour depends on how tight or close it is to the thing behind it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. And it's used off ballet costumes and dance costumes and like ice rink stuff. And I stumbled across it there ages ago, but I'll try and dig out the link.
In terms of Ed's question as well, following on from that, there's another material which I found. It's basically it's a mixture of nylon and polyester that's kind of woven together. I think it's called, it's something hair. It's all artificial, but I found a place that does the colour straight from the factory really well. And it's basically a string, and then coiling out from the string is these really fine hairs of the same coloured material. And I found that I saw that and thought, that looks interesting, and I haven't seen that being used before. So I bought a set and I went out and tested it, and I found it worked blending in with things like grass and moss and sticks and pines and things like that a lot better than anything else that could, like jute or things. And then I tried with epoxy resin. I covered it in the string in that. I kind of covered it in epoxy resin, which kind of flattened the strands down, and then let it set, so it was a lot more solid, a bit more like a twig. And then I kind of forced the strands back out, and it just worked really well for sticks. I haven't got any examples, but I would usually put that maybe dangling down from the head, and also because it's more of a solid thing, I can have it starting from the shoulder and kind of raising slightly above.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? You can get rid of the shape by just building more on one side, because then all of a sudden it doesn't look like a head and shoulders sort of thing. A really good thing to use is in garden centres, when you get like the hanging basket plants, they've got like, it's almost like reconstituted coconut rope, and it comes in baskets, and it's like all brown and woven. If you basically get that wet and stamp the shit out of it, you end up with what just looks like brown crumpled up moss, and you can basically then just grab like a few bits of it, put some cable ties to hold it together in like four corners, and then put a centerpiece on it, and you can literally just put it with raffia as like mounds. And it's cheap. Like garden centres do it for literally a couple of quid. Out of one or two pots, you can get quite a bit out of it, because when you get it wet, it just all pulls apart.
I haven't tried that method before. I've got in my I've got a big, I think it's a 50-meter roll of the coconut kind of bedding, but I haven't really used that because I haven't really found a proper way to attach it. But I'll have to try that. Usually,
little balls of moss.
Yeah.
Moss.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on there?
But yeah, I mean, obviously the alternative that I know a lot of people use is coconut.
Coconut rope.
Coconut rope. Yeah. I would use that a lot as well. But then I also change the colours of it quite dramatically. It's hard to actually colour it to, specific colours, but I can get it to a darker brown or a lighter green, and then what I usually do is I usually have 3 shades. So I have the greener shade, then the browner shade, and then just the standard color. And then I unwind the rope so it comes in the 2 separate strands usually. And then I get one of the separate strands from each color, and I wind it back up together. So you've got the coconut rope, but it's in 3 different shades, and then just attach that on, and it basically does the job of what normal coconut rope would do, but it's in 3 different shades, which just helps give more depth and contrast of shades. And obviously it sticks upright a lot more, so it's good if you want to make it stand off. And I saw Ed or Silly Ghillie attach things like AGM, I believe, or it might have been before AGM, with Halo Screen and cottons, and kind of made like a stick with things on. And that's a method that I use as well. Yeah.
I was with him a couple of weeks ago as he was making it, which I won't go into, but it was interesting because I remember seeing it before I knew what it was, and I was like, "What are you?" Because it was obviously it's quite long, so obviously as part of the process you need some space. And I remember I was like, "What are you doing?" And as he started explaining it to me, I was like, "Can't see it." And then afterwards, I was like, "Now I see it." And it's a clever idea. I think we've been very lucky with the amount of good people we've had doing craft. And obviously you've got yourself, Ed, Simon or Hawkeye, when he was around, like he was really hammering it and doing a lot of he didn't like fake leaves, so he was one of the first people I ever saw using everything but leaves, like cottons, and he got this stuff called quiet wear, which is like a net gaiter, but they've unwoven the cotton so it's like fluffy and moss, and like you stick that on anything and it looks great.
Yeah, Simon was a big inspiration for how I did my suits. I remember back ages ago, jumping on his lives.
He was always online, wasn't he?
It was, he was. I watched his lives, and he was, making his Hawkeye goggles, and the kind of iconic goggles that were made by him. And
I've got some behind me still. I've got mine on my suit there. I've got 2 pairs that have lasted me for 3 years so far. Yeah, going strong.
Yeah, I remember him promoting the quiet wear, as you mentioned. So I bit the bullet of postage cost from America, and I used it at the time as it was for the net gaiter, and it was a good pattern, and obviously you can see why he used it so often. But then I did end up cutting it up like he did and using it as a base for goggles, because it just worked really well for that kind of base. And Hawk especially was one of the biggest influences of crafting back when he was at it, before COVID.
I think we have, and obviously you've got people like Lakova, the guys from Mimtek. There's a couple of other French guys that do some really good stuff. And there used to be a British guy, and he used to do loads of old school videos about like the VSR. Like when YouTube first come around, he was one of the first people I ever saw like take a VSR apart. And he used to do like old school jute stuff with coconut rope, and he used to bury stuff and things like that. And he used to bake Hessian bags in clay.
Interesting.
Like literally in like a pizza oven. He used to bake mud and clay into it so it would go hard. And then he used to, not lacquer, he used to put something on it so that it basically sealed it so it didn't break apart.
Right.
And I'll try and see if I can find him. But he did some weird stuff. And at the time, I didn't really get it. And now it
seems like an interesting method,
Like, I mean, it's an extreme to go to, isn't it? Baking something so you can wear it on the weekend to shoot people.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds interesting. And if it works, it works. I have other methods that work for me.
Jay British. Someone in the comments has just said Jay British. I think that's his name.
That does ring a bell.
And he did some overly complicated ways of how to level your scope to your rifle and stuff using like a torch and a piece of string, and it was like MacGyver shit. Like, it was good though.
No, it's kind of the fundamentals of things.
Is there any more questions? Because we have overrun a little bit. No more questions from the people, but I do, because I know someone is inevitably going to ask, but how much is something like one of these 2 suits? Obviously, they're both on different bases. I'm guessing the right is your traditional Viper and the left is the newer platform. But what about on the right hand side, how much would a Viper one cost?
If we exclude the cost of the Viper base, which usually is around 45, but I'm in contact with Viper to try and get them in bulk prices so I can get them cheaper for people. Usually that style of Hessian would be around about 165 to 170 pounds. I don't particularly want to overcharge. I've been told I could charge more, but I do it for that price because it still gives me enough profit to invest into new materials and new products or things like that. But it's also because I'm happy with doing it for the lesser price, because I just enjoy doing the whole concealment thing, and then getting photos from someone using it on the day. And
I can tell now your passion for it will change and you will start charging more. The things with ghillies, and I've said this to everyone that I know that crafts, like you, Sasha from Manator's Concept Brothers, Ed and Simon when he used to do stuff, is the materials aren't a lot. The cost is the convenience. Because you think like £165 excluding a thing in and of itself is a lot of money, right? Like most people don't just have £165. But most people also don't have 30 hours to do it themselves. Exactly. And if they're working a 9 to 5 job at £10 an hour, their time is worth, like, it's not worth it for them. It's cheaper for them to give it to someone else.
Absolutely,
Whenever I talk to shops about ghillie stuff, I'm always like, you're not selling materials. Like with like Sneaky Leafs and AGM and the pre-done raffia and stuff, like people aren't buying it because it's a good material. People are buying it because it's convenient. Like, if people wanted to spend the time, they could make a good suit using completely different materials that aren't bought from an airsoft shop.
No, absolutely.
But no one has that time. So that's why I'd happily pay that. I think, like, as someone who has crafted, like, obviously my suit there. I'm so lazy, I don't even do trousers anymore. Like, if I get a new suit, the trousers go in a drawer, and I'll probably cut them up to repair my jacket. But otherwise, I wear a jacket and then just trousers.
Yeah, that's kind of load I'll go for. And usually the prices, especially with a Jute suit, that kind of includes the whole weathering process, which involves me crawling through a river and things like that to weather it down.
Start an OnlyFans for that. There's a bloody market for everything. Young guy crawling through mud, filthy.
I think there'd be a few people out there that would be into that. I think it's probably the next business venture I should go into. I think.
Hey, if there's money in it, why not? Right. Well, I don't think there's any more questions, and we have overrun a bit. So I suppose for you, is there any advice, like parting thoughts? Is there any advice you give to people that want to get into the airsoft sniping role, or that want to get into craft, and like any tips for people that are thinking about it?
I think the best advice I would give is not to rush into things because you've been told they work. I think you need to go to an airsoft game and experience what the environment is like that you specifically will play in, how it changes, through seasons, and basically start with stuff that you think it will work, yourself, rather than taking on people saying this will work. And then the way I did mine is I was all self-taught, as a lot of people are, but I found materials that worked, and I'll keep those for the next suit. And then there were materials that didn't work, and I thought, can I modify these to work? And if the answer was no, I'd just scrap them and look for something else. And you end up, it might take a few months and you've changed things on the suits, but then you end up going to a game and you think everything worked on that, I don't need to change anything. And then you can kind of I think it's just a lot, take your time and not rush into things just because you think, well, if I've got this on which works for other people, then it's going to work for me, because the materials might not fit your play style, or your environment, or just how you play as a person. So I think the camouflage really depends on you as a person and how you work and what your site is like.
I still stand by, someone who doesn't know the role will stand out in the best leaf suit versus someone who knows how to play the role in just BDUs, just like multicam BDUs.
Absolutely.
Like, placement and understanding the role and the site. Like obviously, if you go to a site frequently, you know the ins and outs of it, you're inherently going to have an advantage.
Yeah.
But obviously, knowing when to move, like the common thing I see, and this I know it annoys Ed and Hutchie and James and all the other snipers that I talk to. It'll probably annoy you when someone crafts a suit. Like, let's say they've got a KM suit and they've got a winter pack or cottons or whatever, and it looks great. And then they take position next to a tree in direct sunlight, silhouetted.
It's tree cancer. That's how I call it. It's just, I usually, I see it all the time, and usually I've shot them because of that. And sometimes they go up to me and they say, why did you see me? Like I was in trouble for it. And I, you say, well, this is what was wrong. You need to position yourself more. And people need to remember that, as you said, camouflage isn't everything. It's just, the basics of movement and why things are seen.
Don't perch up next to a tree. Mold yourself around the tree, like lay around it. Don't just go tree, me. Lay around it, have your head tucked into the roots, like get under it.
Yeah.
It is good to see people getting into sniping though. Like when I started, right about the time you were conceived, there was literally like 2 of us going to sites. Whereas now, like to be fair, I go to battle lakes quite regularly. And I think there's like 6 of us that are sniping, like a couple in each team usually. But I've been to like ASGB last time I went before the pandemic. And it was like as many snipers as there were AEG players.
Yeah.
And it's good. It makes you play differently. Like, your confidence dwindles. Like when I was at Lakes and I played with Ed and Kenny from Empire Airsoft on my team, fine. When they moved on to the other team, my gameplay changed. Like you have to,
absolutely.
Because your threat level's different, right? The way they're playing is how I would play. I now have to look for where I would move to and think, are they already there? Because that's where they're going to move to. But
absolutely.
But yeah, I think that is it then. That is every question that I could see on the cards that people asked. Yeah, Ed was the last one. So, yeah, for me personally, thank you for coming on, Josh. It was good chatting to you before the stream. And obviously, on the stream's been good. I think people have enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great. I'm glad I can kind of share how I started and hopefully help some people out. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, people love the Ghillie stuff, so if you ever want to come back on again, you can. Like maybe next time. I'm trying to work out if we could have 2 cameras set up, because if you could use a webcam for like chatting like this, but have a desk cam that we could have there, so you could show people like a selection of materials and stuff.
I could definitely sort it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd definitely have you on again. It's been a good live.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, in that case, then we'll end the stream there. So thank you for everyone that joined. Hopefully you guys liked it. And if you haven't already, you can find Josh as SniperZeroAlpha on Instagram. Have you got a website or a YouTube?
No, I never really got into that. I do plan to have a website set up by the end of the year to have a different range of airsoft and military stuff. But YouTube I never got into. Maybe I should have, but I never jumped on that train.
I think your content, YouTube's a weird one. Like gameplay is obviously the thing, like technical stuff and crafting stuff, not so much. But I think blog-wise, or like a website-wise, and definitely Instagram, obviously, me and Ed were talking about this, like ghillie stuff is very eye-appealing, right? Like people love it when you throw a ghillie down and it vanishes, or you did a cool one where you lay backwards or whatever it was onto like the orange hood and it just vanishes. Like stuff like that people like. Yeah, see, I generally do look at your content, not just blowing smoke up your ass. I see everything. But once again, thanks Josh for joining. Thank you for everyone else that joined. Hope you've all enjoyed it. And if you haven't already, check Josh's stuff out on Instagram. And we'll get him on again soon. But for now, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.